Hello, my wonderful, wonderful friends. Last time we were discussing Joseph and Potiphar, and as we may remember, Potiphar threw Joseph in jail because he believed his wife's story that Joseph tried to sleep with her, but in reality Joseph did not. So Joseph was falsely accused and thrown into prison. And that is where we are going to pick up. So we're going to start at Genesis chapter 40, verse 1. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer, the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." "This is what it means," Joseph said to him. "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." "This is what it means," Joseph said. "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh." Now the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile, when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside those on the river bank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled." So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. I cannot do it, Joseph replied to Pharaoh, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, In my dream I was standing on the bank of the Nile, when out of the river there came up 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they grazed among the reeds. After them 7 other cows came up, scrawny and very ugly and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The lean, ugly cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came up first, but even after they ate them, no one could tell that they had done so. They looked just as ugly as before. Then I woke up. In my dream I saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing on a single stalk. After them 7 other heads sprouted, withered and thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads. I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials, so Pharaoh asked them, Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. And I'm going to stop there at Genesis 41:40. So, right off the bat, we see that God has just made a horrible situation into an amazing situation. Joseph has just been promoted from falsely accused prisoner to second in command of Egypt. Now, granted, it hadn't all been hunky-dory till then. We see that Joseph is falsely accused. He's in prison for a while, but God blesses him and makes him in charge of some of the prisoners that just so happen to be connected to Pharaoh. What are the odds of that? So, we see that God has presented an opportunity to Joseph. We see that the 2 men, the baker and the cupbearer, have these dreams. And I can't blame the baker. You see, chapter 40, verse 16, when the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he decides to give Joseph his dream. And I think all of us would have done that. We all want good news. But unfortunately for the baker, it was not all good news. What I want to call your attention to in chapter 41 is the first verse. It says, When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. And why I want to call your attention to this is because the cupbearer forgot Joseph for an entire 2 years. Joseph was in that prison for 2 years. He's been away from his family for a very long time. He is a man of patience to wait 2 years. And I don't know if he knew if the cupbearer would remember him ever. Because a lot of the time, we don't know God's plans. It's possible that God was like, alright, hang on, wait, I'm presenting something to you. It's possible. But it could be also that Joseph had no idea if he was ever going to escape that prison. But he didn't give up hope. And when the opportunity presented itself, he had a plan. Joseph's response to Pharaoh is particularly interesting. Genesis chapter 41, verse 15, it says, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream, and no one can interpret it, but I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. In verse 16, Joseph says, I cannot do it. That in and of itself is a huge leap of faith and trust. Can you imagine? Your life is in the balance. You're sprung out of prison to interpret this dream, and you say you can't interpret it. I'm sure it took Pharaoh and his officials back a bit, but Joseph gives all credit to God. It says, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. Huge leap of faith. The fact that Pharaoh didn't just execute him there on the spot. God was working for Joseph's good. So God interprets Pharaoh's dream through Joseph. And we see that Joseph has been given a plan, if you will. He says, let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. And that was Genesis chapter 41, verse 34. And he goes on to say the rest of his plan about how you're supposed to store up in the years of good, so that when the years of bad come, you're prepared for them. Now, I don't know if Joseph was like hint, hint, nudge, nudge with this, like, hey, I'm available, I can do it. Or if God was speaking wisdom through him and he just said it, not thinking that they would pick him. I'm not sure. But again, God is providing an opportunity for Joseph. Now, Joseph had to go through a bunch of stuff to get there. He was sold into slavery by his brothers. He was falsely accused by his master's wife. And then he was forgotten in prison for a whole 2 years. But through all of that, God was with him. And God never forgot Joseph in that prison. He will never forget us either. He is here with us. God is with us in each and every moment. And he's working. He has a plan. He has a purpose. And I'm going to end there. I hope you all have a wonderful night, a wonderful day, and a wonderful morning. Bye.